know it's lunchtime and we're really, really delayed, but thank you for your patience. And I also want to say thank you to the gentlemen who are here, because my topic is essentially for women, so don't feel bad. But in this whole journey of feminine empowerment and leadership and empowering women, we need our men-folk as partners. So for every one of you that understands our journeys, it helps us change the world to be a better place. So I'm going to start with what are the intentions for this talk, and I'm going to give you a little bit of context on why is it that I'm here speaking on this topic. Speak a little bit about the dynamics of masculine and feminine energies, and then what are the traps that we as women get caught up in because of our history? And then what is it that we can do to shift that to come back into our power? And then if we have time and patience, and we can do some Q&A. How does that sound? Fantastic. So I'm going to do a little bit of reading because I haven't practiced this enough. Sorry about that. I'm not like the other keynote speakers. I'm going to start with that 25 years ago, as a young woman, I could have never imagined that I would be here speaking to amazing leaders like yourselves about feminine leadership or empowerment. And the reason for that is because I myself was born and brought up in a patriarchal family and culture where women were anything but empowered. But what happened with that is it hurt, and that sort of reality hurt my soul quite deeply as a young girl. But as they say, the wound is where the light enters. So over the years, I understood from both direct and subliminal messages that the girls were the lesser ones in the room. The stories I heard and saw around me sealed this belief. I still remember all the women sighing with relief when their firstborn was a son, and having to deal with the disappointed faces of others when it was a girl. Are we all familiar with that? With this subtle rejection that my soul felt profoundly and unknowingly, I developed a sense of shame for being a girl. And in trying to get away from that shame, I decided I was going to be and act like one of the boys. I did my best to nestle in with my brother and his friends. I wanted to transform my delicate, sensitive self to be tough, to be athletic and sporty. And even when someone deliberately hurt me, I wouldn't cry. I wanted to clamp down the tears because I didn't want to be seen as weak or girly. And I remember I prayed and I prayed to God, please don't give me breasts. And then when I got my period, I was so angry because I thought that was my punishment for being a girl. And therein started what I call my journey of adaptation to what is called a masculine worldview. And the burden of this worldview is not mine alone. It is one that many of my feminine sisters carry, probably a lot of you out here. So I decided that I'm going to change this by being really tough. I tried to achieve this by pretending to be a lot more courageous than I really was. I refused to accept failure. This mindset made me a very self-motivated and determined kind of person. And I became very stubborn and feisty and extremely driven. But underneath that drive to achieve remained a longing for recognition, for worthiness. All that desire and motivation was a desire to overcome the shame of being me, a girl. The common thread among, in all those years of trying to be someone or something, the exact nature of which was unknown even to me, was this constant sense of emptiness in my soul that ultimately did lead to my depression. So many of us get away for a long time living and being this way. And luckily for me, that was not to be because I had what I called awakenings. And the first point of awakening was when depression struck me at 32. And the doctor said I might be officially depressed. I was like, there is no way. I am too strong, too smart to be depressed. But the signs were all there. The lack of motivation, the feeling tired, inability to feel joy. On this occasion, it was the feminine wisdom of my mother that had come to my rescue. At 40, it was my physical health that seemed to be failing. I was losing weight. I could not digest food. I was getting infection after infection. And each time the doctor said there was nothing fundamentally wrong with me. Long story short, it was my feminine wisdom that came to me through intuition that led me to discover that I had a precancerous growth in my cervix that was causing all of this trauma in my body. It was my feminine intuition and wisdom that was screaming for attention. And what I'm going to talk about a little bit later is how much of our feminine wisdom actually speaks through us and is delivered to us through our bodies. So, 2 turning points. Depression at 32 led me to the discovery of my authentic self, and that journey is sort of put down in my book, Blueprint of the Authentic You. And then the second one, I would say, is at 40, when I got this precancerous growth, I realized that I was actually disconnected from my feminine essence. I was stuck in this loop of doing more and more, making more and more, achieving more and more, whereas my soul, my body, and my feminine self was in desperate need of care and nurturance. What happened to me is not my story alone. Women in corporate roles is equal to burnout, and I get this information from Women in the Workplace report from McKinsey and Lean In. And it says a year and a half into the COVID-19 pandemic, women in corporate America are even more burned out than they were last year, and increasingly more so than men. Despite this, women leaders are stepping up to support employee well-being and diversity, equity and inclusion efforts, but that work is not getting recognized. We're burning out, but we're still caring more. 2022, same thing, women leaders are leaving their companies at higher rates than men. So having coached many women leaders, I found that this burnout syndrome was not mine alone. My amazing client, a super smart techie leader, working for an organization that is extremely male-dominated, she is the only woman in a leadership team of 22. When she came to me, she said, I have zero motivation to do anything. The signs of burnout were all there. She said, deep inside, there's a sadness because the environment around her is disrespectful and disregarding of her as a woman because she's left out of the boys' clubs and feels like an outsider. She is overworked, exhausted, and earning lots of money and delivering excellent results. She feels a deep sense of emptiness inside of her. This is a woman who, like I was, has become disconnected with her feminine essence. She has got to where she is by working hard, by being feisty and stubborn, and focusing on achievement and results. But her soul is not supporting her anymore because it knows this is not the way to be. So what is that different way? Any ideas? Are you guys with me so far? Yes. So I want to introduce you to the concept of masculine, feminine values and energy. Can you all see it? Yeah. So for healthy creation and leadership, we need a balance of the two. And all of us human beings actually have both of these within us. But if we are in a masculine body, leading with masculine values and energy puts you in your power. And for women, leading with feminine values and energy puts us in our power center. I want to use the example of Arthur, that super excited guy here. Okay, you remember the speaker? You know, that energy, that is that yang energy, right? Now, if I as a woman, my energy is actually grounding. It's softer. It's totally different from his. Is it less powerful? No, it's different. But if I try to act like Arthur, oh my God, will I burn out really fast, right? So that's what I'm saying. So we both have to balance. He needs to balance by bringing in more yin. I need to probably balance by bringing in more yang. So that's the game. But essentially, women containers are feminine values. So the feminine values are really about when we are like healthy feminine, it's about being intuitive, collaborative, passionate, creative, empathetic. And the healthy masculine is more externally focused. It's competitive, it's goal-oriented, it's results-driven. So that's a masculine energy. When we go into toxicity of both, we can go both toxic masculine and toxic feminine. The toxic masculine becomes controlling, judgmental, aggressive. And for women, the toxic masculine really comes out as I can do this all on my own. Also in men, of course. But the toxic feminine goes into victim mode, becomes powerless, passive-aggressive, suppressed rage, jealousy, resentment, etc., etc. So masculine energy gets drained from taking too much. And the feminine energy gets drained from giving too much. So what does all of this have to do with feminine leadership? For far too long in the corporate and capitalistic structures, there has been an over-focus on the masculine values and an under-focus on the feminine. Do we agree? Yes? We need more women in the workforce and leadership positions because women care. We saw that? Not that men don't, but by nature, women care more. So we care about results, we care about performance, and most importantly, we care about people. So feminine leadership, which is equally relevant for men as it is for women, calls for profit and people, not profit before people. So the first step to understanding your, where am I? Sorry. Okay. The first step to understanding yourself as a woman leader is to understand yourself as a woman. So we are primarily energetic beings, and if we are to prevent burnout, then we need to learn how to manage our energy. Women have a physiologically different energy container than men. Can we see that? And it's not bad, it's not worse, it's different, right? So I'm going to touch upon a few of the traps because of this overfocus on masculine values in the capitalistic structures that women have fallen into, because of which the burnout happens. So and these, I call them traps because these are traps that drain energy from the feminine system. So the first trap is, I'm a superwoman. Superwoman means, what does superwoman mean? You know, we use that, I'm alpha, I'm superwoman. Don't fall for that. That is created by that masculine worldview. We don't have to be alpha, we don't have to be superwoman, we have to be women, right? Empowered women. So that energy is, I do it all and I don't need anyone's help, and I don't ask for help and support because I think that's weakness. If I'm to prove myself strong, then I must do it all by myself. And each trap that I'm speaking about here is not a judgment because I have been in all of them. So this is, and I see it in many, many women, right? Trap 2, perfectionism. How many of you are perfectionists here? How many women perfectionists? Yeah. Perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and self-doubt, all three buddies, because they're all stemming from the same thing. So not just that I have to do it all, I have to do it perfectly. I will think 20 times before sending an email and rework that presentation over and over and over till I'm done with it. So perfectionism is an attempt to compensate for that lack of unworthiness that we feel within. It is a cover act for hiding our vulnerabilities. It is the reason that imposter syndrome and self-doubt exist, because we expect ourselves to be perfect. Is perfection possible? Anybody? Is perfection possible? Is anything in this world perfect? No. I like to use excellence. We can drive towards excellence, but perfectionism is no. So trap 3 is, I'll just try to be like one of the men, like I did when I was young, right? I'm just going to try and be strong. So that's running too much masculine energy into a system that is primarily feminine. So when I'm giving and doing all the time, I'm displaying excessive masculine values in your day-to-day, and then I start becoming aggressive, and I start becoming controlling and demanding. Trap 4, men are just as guilty of this one as women, but emotional numbing. Men can get away with this much further than women can, because the emotional body is the feminine principle, the mental body is the masculine principle, right? So we distract ourselves from our emotional state of being, and we use devices, we use alcohol, we use shopping, and we become disconnected from our own bodies. So ignoring our feminine and emotional vulnerable side that needs care, softness, and nurturance. Trap 5, my personal pet peeve, being the good girl. So how did men get power in the back of good old days? From being bad boys, right? So they were encouraged to be bad boys, and we women were told to be good girls. So the good girl paradigm is so deeply ingrained in us, and I think like we can have days of conversation in this in all the ways it presents itself, and it will not be enough. But being a girl, I'm sorry. Being a good, does anybody need to leave? Because you can. I have another 10 minutes. Is that okay, everybody? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. So being a good girl makes us not speak up even when we desperately should. It teaches us never to say no, always be helpful, self-sacrificing, with no concept of boundaries. And it keeps us away from our power. So if you want to change the world, we have to change by changing ourselves, right? We've heard that, everybody says, all the coaches talk about it, change begins from within. So we've been through this. Feminine leadership is about learning to nurture yourself first, so you can then nurture and empower others. It starts with the journey within and pours into the journey without. So I'm going to introduce you to, so what are the other side of that energy drain? So how do we then connect back to our feminine essence, right? And I call these the feminine power centers. So when we are attuned to our power centers, we expend far less energy. And when we understand and use these power centers, we are tapping into our feminine essence and leading from there, right? So the first power center for a woman is her body. So the feminine energy resides in the physical body, and this is true for both men and women. So when I want to get a man in touch with his feminine side, I will do a body meditation. But it's also the same for women. But for women, it's much more important to have a wonderful relationship with our own bodies. And what's been the training over the last thousands of years for women? To hate our bodies, right? So our bodies are the most magical, creative things, right? We take a little semen, and what do we do inside our body? We turn it into a human being. That is the power of this vehicle. And to work from our greatest power center, we must love and honor our bodies as a sacred temple. I wish I could talk more about this because that's such a powerful subject. The second power center for women is receiving. You know how our bodies, our physiological energy containers are designed? So our wombs, our vaginas, they are our power poles, and they're designed to what? Receive, right? So when we shut out receiving, we are shutting out, by being superwoman, we are closing access to our essential nature, which is receptivity. We think generosity. For men, it's generosity, power. For women, it's receptivity. So men get energy from doing, women from receiving. And so we need to learn to receive energy first before we go out and do. That's why it's important to fill our own cup. Power center 4, self-love and authenticity. So these go hand in hand. So this is the way we can fill our own cup with energy, and authenticity is the antidote to perfectionism, to imposter syndrome, to self-doubt. When I know who I am, I can take ownership of both my strengths and my vulnerabilities. And I think reading my book will help you there. And our 4th power center is intuition. It is one that got deeply disregarded with the advent of science and data. But leading with intuition is an art that we need to finesse. A woman's intuitive wisdom is far superior than our male counterparts. You guys are better at other things, we are better at this, right? Once we attune to intuition, we waste less energy working on things that we don't need to. So we go straight solution, we've got it. And so we need to learn to harness that and trust it. And the last one for women is our desire bodies. So the desire body of all human beings is the feminine principle. And we've been taught not to desire. Like we've been taught not to be ambitious, that good girl thing, right? But desire is essential for us, and the most successful women actually become successful because they take full ownership of the unabashed desire to become CEOs or leaders. But a lot of us sit in fear because we're afraid we might not get it, we might have like unfulfilled expectations, or it's wrong. So taking emotional ownership of the desire body to express itself is very important for women. That brings me to my closing side, which is I invite all of you women to channel the goddess inside you. So we are the yin, the feminine creative and transformative principle. And for the world to honor us as such, we need to learn to honor ourselves and each other the same way. And in that love for ourselves and each other, maybe we can bring that wisdom that this world so desperately needs into the forefront. And learn to take care of ourselves as energetic beings. So we need to learn to manage our energy, not our time. And that's true for men as well, by the way. So if you want to work with me, there's my book. You can get it on Amazon. And connect with me at Jasreen Singh. I'm on all the channels, and you can email me there as well. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Jasreen, for giving us wonderful insights on the feminine energy and how we kind of move away from it many a times. I can take up one question from the audience if you would like. Before we break for lunch, I'm sure all of us would like to go for lunch. So just let's take up one question. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Jasreen. I think we need to hear more of what you're talking about to help organizations to shift. I'm bothered by something that you said earlier on in terms of the figures. The figures continue not to change year in, year out.
Yeah.
Next month is going to be International Women's Day.
Yeah.
And this is what seems to happen in my experience coaching women, is that they come for a coaching session.
Yes.
It's like we're putting this bandage. They go back into the corporate world.
Yes.
And the next session, the bandage has been removed.
Yeah.
So it's this continuous cycle of things not moving. And this is what I'm seeing, is that women do not need to be changed.
No.
They go back into organizations. What is it that needs to take place in organizations to start to create this shift? Because the thing is, for coaching to be even more effective, we need the workplace to start to create environments, not just saying, but really being able to practice empathy, being able leaders that see women, because we see ourselves. I'm sure you've experienced that so many times coaching women, that women do see themselves, they've expanded their identity. For everything to change, if you think about our economics, male are dominating, and that's what we need to shift. So my question for you is, in your experience, what needs to take place to create a culture from a leadership perspective to really see women? Thank you.
So that's obviously a very powerful question. Thank you for that. I think it's two ways, right? We talked about culture. It has to be both top-down and bottom-up. It cannot be just one. So I think leadership, having values that support this, is very important. But I still think the most important thing I can do to make a shift is change me, right? The moment I become unaffected by the patriarchal worldview, I have created a shift in energy for all the women around me, right? And so that same behavior, that male dominance, that used to impact me before, is not going to impact me anymore. So let's say a patriarchal worldview or energy comes through me like that, but because I'm healed, it doesn't wound me anymore. It gets dissipated. So as coaches, that's what we need to do. We need to make more women forget this wounding, to not just bandage it, to clean out from consciousness, one woman at a time. But yes, I think having masculine partners who understand and support our story, I think having leadership teams that are very cognizant of that and aware of that, creating work-life balance situations. So of course, empowering women and recognize that we're carrying multiple burdens as well. So from a policy perspective, from a regulation perspective, we also need to change it. It has to be a 360-degree approach. But for each of us, women, clean your own consciousness. So I can talk about this now so freely because it doesn't wound me anymore, right? And I can empower the women because I've been through the journey from being wounded to healed. So we all can do it. If I can do it, we all can do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jasri.